Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Let's Start Justice with Jamaicans for Justice, JFJ. This is, of course, the program that you can get your updates on human rights issues and us exploring all the different legislative challenges and concerns that you may or may not be aware of. I'm Michael Jackson, Executive Director for JFJ.
And I'm Jade Williams, the Policy and Advocacy Specialist at JFJ.
Unfortunately, today's topic will be, well, all of our topics are serious, if you will, but I don't think I can salivate with those who are watching the World Cup.
Yes, so unfortunately, it's not that kind of theater this week.
Not at all. But at 2 o'clock, the next show will, of course, guide you through the World Cup festivities.
Absolutely.
Now, for this week's human rights issue, there are 3 things I would want us to discuss. Now, yesterday, I'm not sure if persons have seen videos and reports of a 24-year-old that was killed down by the central Kingston area following allegations of confrontation with a member of the Jamaica Defence Force. But Jada, what was seen in the video is quite concerning, because clearly this young man is unharmed and he was shot in the back. And I think as Jamaicans, we all have to be outraged and send strong condemnation. And I'm awaiting word from the Minister of National Security expressing repudiation with what seems to be an extrajudicial killing. It's very concerning for us, given that this particular area has been under zones of special operations since, October 2017?
Yes, quite some time now, an extended period to have that level of surveillance and policing security measures around a community. So I can imagine, regardless of this event, the kinds of tensions and frustrations of the person.
And the regressive step that is being taken.
Yes.
Because if you remember, surrounding communities, historically, the trust levels are low. We're trying to rebuild, and this certainly has taken us a step back.
Absolutely.
Tied to this particular issue, notwithstanding our concerns about a crime plan being discussed or declared, if you will, at a political conference, we waited with bated breath for the Prime Minister to discuss what the components of that
plan would be.
Comprehensive plan would be. What the public heard instead was a crime plan that focuses on more arbitrary arrest and detention measures. We heard, finally, because remember the Enhanced Security Measures Act, the government has been touting its intent since 2019 to table such bills. So finally we hear that it's going to be tabled next fiscal year, which is about April 2023. So this Enhanced Security Measures Act, paraphrasing the Prime Minister now, would be a state of emergency on criminals. So the government has seen 2 court rulings signaling that the state of public emergency is very problematic and runs contrary to our constitution. So the government is now seeking to put the emergency measures in routine or statutory law, if you will. Very, very concerning.
Yes, concerning.
For us.
And not to be pedantic, but the court ruling actually said that it's the way that it is being implemented, because of course we recognize that there's provision for it under the Constitution. But what is the issue is there needs to be specific reasons detailed in the Constitution, where those reasons have to indicate that there is an actual emergency.
Yes.
So the general crime rate, I don't think by any measure.
I take it a step further. Not the general crime rate. The fact that Christmas season is coming up on us, quoting the Prime Minister, yet again, cannot be seen as a reason to have extraordinary measures.
Certainly not an emergency one, as per the Constitution.
Yes. And lastly, the parliamentary opposition is sending signal that it is reviewing whether or not it will lend its support to extending the SOEs. And I want to take the time briefly to remind the parliamentary opposition that its role in Parliament is to zealously safeguard the respect of the Constitution. And notwithstanding the political pressure that the opposition may or may not be facing, political expediency cannot be a justification to rip apart the Constitution in the manner that we're seeing. But my lecture ends, and I turn over to you, Jade.
Well, luckily for us this week, our topic is something that will allow us to ventilate some more of these issues in greater detail with the guests that we have today. But we go straight into our right of the day this week, which is about your rights upon arrest or detention. So as per your constitution, it's nothing that we're making up each week when we give you your right of the day. It is from either your constitution or from a piece of legislation. So the right is, any person who is arrested or detained shall have the right to, firstly, communicate with or be visited by their spouse, partner, family member, religious counselor, medical practitioner of his choice. And we often get the report that this is not in practice. But when we talk about our rights, we have to remember that this is what should be in practice. And if we don't know them, then we cannot hold persons accountable when they're breached. So that is one of your rights, to have that communication. You are also to be, importantly, informed of the reason for your arrest or detention in a language that you understand and as soon as reasonably practicable, which was one of the points in a very important case for JFJ Everton Douglas, where he was not informed of the reasons for his arrest under an SOE and continuously held for an extended period of time. We would also have the ability to be told, if you are charged, what the offense is that you are charged with in a language you understand. And of course, you have the right to communicate with and retain an attorney at law. So that's your right of the day on arrest and detention, and we go straight into our trivia question for the week. And as our regular listeners would know, and our new listeners may not know, you get $1,000 credit if you answer this trivia question correctly. You can answer the question through our WhatsApp at 2397583 or through our social media pages at Jamaicans for Justice or JA for Justice on Instagram. And the trivia question is, which year was the first state of emergency called under this current administration? January 2018, February 2018, or November 2022? And based on the discussion today, Mikel, we might just hear the answer coming out for this trivia question. So listen closely, and you might just win yourself $1,000 credit. And remember that you can call in and contribute to the conversation, share your experiences under these issues that we're going to discuss at 876-676-4996, or you can send us a WhatsApp at 876-239-7583.
They won't get the answer. I'm going to skip over it. So the state of public emergency was first declared in St. James on this particular date by the Prime Minister.
Okay.
And then in October 2017, the Denham Town community in West Kingston was declared a zone of special operations, or ZOZO, under the Law Reform Act.
So both measures allow for the security forces to implement curfews, to cordon and search persons, premises, and vehicles without warrant. And the state of public emergency allows security forces powers of arrest and detention without charge for a specified period in accordance with the accompanied regulations.
Now, the country may now be aware that we're under seven parishes are under SOE that ends November 29th. And following the declaration at the time, the Honorable Prime Minister Andrew Holness noted that the regulations would be made public, and they were released. In fact, 2 days later, on the Thursday evening, JFJ received it from a media entity. Within these regulations, there are some noted restrictions on the citizens' rights, and they include
answering any question to the best of their ability and knowledge, any reasonable question posed by a security force. So if you're stopped and required to answer a question, you must do so. And we'll talk about those implications. The possibility of being detained for up to 6 weeks without charge. And now persons are able to make some objection to the review tribunal, but when you are able to make that objection is also problematic, as you are at least waiting a 7-day period.
Just to clarify, you can now make your objection known to the review tribunal upon detention. But the concern that we have is that the objection, if you will, how are you able to make that objection known when you don't know the review tribunal? So there are two points of clarification, because if that objection is not taken up by the detainee upon detention, then the review tribunal now automatically reviews the detention orders at 7-day intervals.
Well, Prime Minister Holness would have pointed out that the government will not solely be relying on SOEs, which is one of our concerns, to fight crime. But the government will also be drafting an enhanced security measures bill within the next fiscal year.
This bill will be a state of emergency on criminals. It will have the development of a watch list for criminals. It will have special orders for detention for criminals. And it will have the imposition of control orders on the activities of criminals. These will give the police standing powers. We intend to have this bill before Parliament in the next fiscal year.
No, JFJ, we have raised concerns about the routine use of extraordinary measures, given it violates several civil rights and liberties that us as Jamaican citizens have. However, the JDF Chief of Staff, Rear Admiral Antoinette Gorman, posits that there is no need for that concern.
Thank you for your question, sir. In respect of states of public emergencies, I think my assurance could be that since we have been declaring or using this tool, that there are no cases that security forces have abused the human rights of any Jamaicans under the SOE. My assurance, further assurance, is that once we put new persons into the fight, we ensure that they are exposed and trained appropriately before they're deployed.
With the government's clear intent that extraordinary measures are needed to fight crime, what can the public expect? Do current SOEs and ZOSOs work? And what rights do citizens possess under these specific measures? So joining us today to have this discussion, we will have joining us John Clark, attorney at law and board member at Jamaicans for Justice, and we'll also have Mr. Dennis Robotham, the president of the St. Catherine Chamber of Commerce.
So we're just going to take a break, and then on the other side of the break, the discussions will be had. Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. Just want to remind our listeners that they can contact our phone lines at 676-4996, or they can also WhatsApp their views at 239-7583. And certainly you can join us live on our YouTube platform where we can chat and you can voice your concerns there. We are discussing the rights of citizens doing these extraordinaries or enhanced security measures, if you will. And we are joined by Mr. Dennis Robotham from the St. Catherine Chamber of Commerce, as well as Mr. John Clark, our attorney at law and my boss, my board director at JFJ. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to you all.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for joining. Is that Mr. Robotham?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Clark is there?
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Michael. Good afternoon, Mr. Robotham.
Hi, Mr. Clark. Good afternoon.
And Jade Williams, our policy specialist, is here with me. Let me start with you,
Mr.
Mr.
Jade as well.
Afternoon.
Let me start with you, Mr. Robotham. What's the position of your entity regarding the SOEs that have been declared? What is your view?
Well, speaking from the St. Catherine perspective, we were a little surprised, to be honest with you, because, you know, we have been having meetings with our local representatives and from the hierarchy of St. Catherine North. And we thought that we were on the right trajectory in terms of crime going down, and, you know, we're in the right place coming up to Christmas. And just for the record, you know, St. Catherine lost roughly about 3 Christmases, so to speak. The 2 from a pandemic, I think 1 from the SOE. So we have been in the negative when Christmas for the last 3 years. So, you know, we kind of found it strange and surprised that, you know, the SOE was called for St. Catherine in particular. But based on if they have intel, well, you know, there's nothing we can do where that is concerned. But we thought that, you know, based on what was happening, and I always believe, and I think the chamber, you know, recognizes, and when the SOE is called, when it is necessitates that call for the SOE, we are glad to have it because I think it's a short-term method, and it works on the short-term basis in terms of quelling the uprising, whatever the situation is. You know, commuters, businesses feel a little more comfortable when they're around when there is such an upsurge of crime. But at this particular point in time, we believe that, things seem a little normal and was going on the right way.
Yes.
And we believe that, calling a SOE, and there were some particulars that we weren't aware of, the curfews, the hours, that sort of thing. We were kind of skeptical where that was concerned, because even just a couple of days ago, we had spot checks out at Twickenham Park. And let me tell you, it was a parking lot for quite some time.
I want to interject before we switch over to John, because I know Jade has her question. When the SOE was announced, I just want to be very clear. When did you and your entity become aware of the regulations or anything governing the SOE? I want to be very clear on that day.
Well, when it was called, based on what the Prime Minister said, we were aware of certain things, but the curfews and the hours and that sort of thing was not really, discussed or passed down to us at the particular time when he made the call. So we were still up in the air where that was concerned.
Okay, so you're fully aware now of the provisions of the SOE?
Well, for most parts that we are aware, but still not sure of the curfew or if there's going to be curfews and the hours that there was going to be. And, if it's just for the 2 weeks, the 14 days, going into Christmas, we hope that it will be lifted. Hopefully that we can probably have, a reasonable business Christmas. Having lost 2 so far, we are hoping that this will be the case.
Okay.
And then, so far as we were concerned.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Robotham. And I don't want to leave off of the concerns regarding the regulations from a human rights perspective, because we're hearing the commercial side of it. But from the human rights perspective, we've had some concerns about what is actually in the regulations as it relates to particularly detention of persons. Mr. Clark, I don't know if you have any thoughts about what the regulations actually say, the kind of powers that they're giving.
Sorry, before we go there, I wanted to say that I completely understand that persons, including businesses, have a legitimate concern with the high level of crime. But I heard Mr. Robertson, and I heard specifically the commercial concerns one, and especially the thought that crime seemed to have been trending down in St. Catherine. I don't know if I misquoted Mr. Robertson. Am I, sir?
No, that's right. Based on what we were made to understand, from
Yes.
St. Catherine perspective, St. Catherine North in particular,
Yes.
that things are trending down.
And just to say, John, that the same applied for the Kingston and St. Andrew parishes.
Yeah, so the concern is, and the concern that I guess we have deeply is how it is that in other areas where crime is trending up, in fact, even more than 90% state of emergencies were not declared for those areas. But in areas where maybe trending down, state of emergency is declared. If you look at it too, you see almost in every single area where state of emergency is recently declared, there was previously a state of public emergency. Is it that state of public emergency that were previously called were not successful in arresting the causes of upsurging crime, and as such we need to have it again? And then, as Mr. Robertson say, will the citizens have to sacrifice their right to enjoy Christmas? Businesses their right to have conduct their affairs, make some money for Christmas. Will have to be sacrificed on the altar of security. Now, ultimately, everybody, every law-abiding citizen wants a country where crime is reduced. But the question is, every single time when sacrifices are called upon to be made, it is the law-abiding citizen who must sacrifice their freedom of movement, who must sit in a car park on Twickenham Park Road while the police clearing vehicles. One wonder how successful the strategy is in really getting results in reducing crime. Now, ultimately, the question is this. I've had state of public emergency before. Why it is that we need to be revisiting the same thing, and what is the long-term solution? Where is the Enhanced Security Measure Act, which was spoken about for a long time? Why hasn't that been introduced? And why it is that any position, whether it is green or orange, can think that they have the right, when they feel, to declare that a state of public emergency exists, and as such, to take away constitutionally guaranteed rights from citizens, from businesses, just because of a declaration made by or on the advice of politicians. Now, ultimately, I don't think that is we can forever govern ourselves as a country that way, because when these things occur, what you have is that the jurisdiction of the court is being infringed. I hear the Prime Minister, the clips that he played earlier, indicating that we're thinking about detention orders, so that under even the Enhanced Security Measure Act. So that means citizens may very well be detained for an extended period of time without a court, which is normally the mechanism by which persons are declared a criminal having a say. Now, you heard the Prime Minister say criminals are the persons who will be targeted. But who makes that determination if someone is a criminal? Will it be a judge or will it be a police officer? And ultimately, we have lived in a country for hundreds of years where we form the view that the courts were the best place with their rules and their system of evidence to determine who are the criminals and who should be held to account. And ultimately, are we now living in a new paradigm where politicians and police will take over the role of the court? And is that this a country we want, where the rule of man replaces the rule of law?
One of the questions, John, just to piggyback on something you said, the parliamentarians have indicated that with the restructuring of the review tribunal rather, we're now seeing wherein the Chief Justice has the responsibility to name those who would sit on the review tribunal, for example. Persons can now make their objections known upon detention and so on. With those provisions being improved, do you still share some of the concerns that were earlier ventilated?
Yes. Yes. And the reason for that is this. There is already a criminal justice system. The criminal justice system existed before we gained independence. The criminal justice system is a system that exists and is developed from our experiences, lessons learned worldwide. Now, this executive detention system with the review tribunal is a new invention with new rules, with new procedure, with an even new registry. We don't even know where the registry is right now. Ultimately, why it is that we believe that the criminal justice system, which has always been underfunded, the police investigative capacity, which has always been underfunded, why it is that scarce resources are being diverted from developing those areas which are long-term plan, long-term solutions, to a short-term solution. Who is going to pay this review tribunal? How much money will they get? Mm-hmm. And ultimately, why are they better placed than judges who have been trained for decades in relation to what is the appropriate way to resolve questions? Or are they better than judges?
Right,
and
thanks.
Ultimately, will accountability be sacrificed?
All right, thanks, John. I'm going to ask both gentlemen just to hold with us. We're going to take a break, and then on the other side, we'll follow up with Mr. Robotham.
Okay.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We are talking about the recent announcement of several, seven?
Seven parishes.
Seven parishes that are now under state of emergency. Joining us is Mr. John Clark and Mr. Dennis Robotham. Mr. Robotham, I wanted to ask you, I heard some of your concerns about the effect of the SOE on the ability of the community to grow and to engage in their regular activities, and considering the length of time, how long we've been instituting these measures, in particular in St. Catherine, and your statement about the support of it in terms of the short term, but right. I think we can say that there is a clear indication that it is not being applied in the short term. It's been a number of years now since we've been applying the same measure over and over to the same, in some cases, the same communities. So I wonder what aspects exactly of the measures, when they are implemented, are of benefit to your organization. I believe you represent the Chamber of Commerce there. So what is of actual benefit? Because I can see how it can be a detriment based on the restrictions that it would place on how businesses are able to operate.
Well, most things have pros and cons to it, And as I said, the short term. For example, St. Catherine, as you know, is one of the volatile areas, and possibly we have two major gangs here, and although they have now become not the major threats, because that they are now self-sufficient in terms of financing and that sort of thing. So they are operating within themselves, but we have two gangs. But before they were self-sufficient, then there was outright war between both of them. When they flare up, then we have some serious murders and killings right in our streets. The SOE used to come in and kind of calm the situation, and people were feeling more free to walk about, to commute, to do business and that sort of thing. So it became sort of a crutch for the businesses and the people in general, because areas that were under siege, most times people had to sleep under them beds and that sort of thing. When the SOE and the police came on board, whenever those flare-ups were, people were able to sleep a little easier and that sort of thing. But now the situation is still in that terms. We still have that situation, because up to recently, as you all remember, when there was an open gunfire killing in the market area and the business area, the SOE came in, which was really commended at the time, and people felt comfortable having them because of what was happening. Now, the fact of the matter is that based on when these things happen, the intel and the intelligence, I believe, should follow to create a more in-depth scrutiny and a more surgical way to remove the criminals from these areas. And I think we have developed an understanding, and I mean the police. If I in my own scenario as a layman and don't have the facilities as the police, we understand where the criminals are, where they operate from, that sort of thing. Why are we not doing more intelligence? Why are we not using more technology, cameras, Jamaica Eye?
But that's exactly where we want to go, Mr. Robotham, because when I listen to what the police calls success of the SOEs, I hear about illegal firearms being removed off the streets. I hear about what you call the bullets now? What you call those things?
I'm not the one to say.
You don't know what it's called, Jade. But you hear about illegal firearms and so on being removed. You don't hear about the gangs being dismantled. And then when persons are charged based on the intelligence, it's hardly converted into evidence to sustain those charges before the courts. So what happened is another flare-up. So I think at this stage, I think we're beyond calling this short-term now, because as Jade rightly outlined, it's now the measure of the day, the strategy of the day for the government. So I listened to you and I heard you talking about Jamaica Eye. And I think the community policing is something, because I live in the St. Catherine area myself, is something that we would want to feel safe. So if you could just, in another 30 seconds for us, Mr. Robotham, what would be your recommendation to the government as these medium to long-term measures and things that they ought to be sustaining going forward?
Well, one can look around the other jurisdictions and see that technology is basically forensic technology, that sort of thing is the key to dealing with crime in nearly every other jurisdiction that has been successful so far. I believe that we are not using those methods to its maximum to achieve, or is it that we haven't got the political will to do what is necessary because we have some people on this side over here and some people on that side over there, and when the green is in, then we don't want to trouble that here, and when the orange is in, we don't want to trouble that here, and that sort of thing. But I believe the time has come that if we really are serious about putting crime under subjection, we need to deal with the intelligence. We need to deal with, cameras and everything. Yes. It's not a light bulb these days. If you set up to cauterize and surgical remove criminals, it can be done.
Yes.
I don't see the difficulty that there is, because if you go in some areas, you can point out and take license plate numbers and do your checks and see what's happening here and there, and you can find out certain things. Proceeds of Crime Act is another thing I don't think that we have been utilizing in depth.
Yes.
That can use those aspects of the law to bring to bear.
Yes, in simple terms for the listeners, follow the money, so to
Yes,
speak.
definitely. And we can do all of that sort of thing to bring crime under subjection. And you must remember, what percentage of criminals there is. The bad guys are in the minority. We are supposed to be in the majority, and we are allowing the minority to overrun the majority. It speaks volume.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Robotham. And jumping off of what you have said, about underutilized legislation. I wonder if more new legislation is really the consideration that we need to have. And I throw that question to you, Mr. Clark. Considering that Enhanced Security Measures Act has been announced now to be coming next year, early next year, what do you think about this as a long-term solution? Is this really the legislative direction that we should be going in order to tackle the issues that we're seeing here?
All right. Before I answer that, I want to know that I hear from Mr. Robotham is a concern. I guess once persons see crime happening in their community, they want to see the boots on the ground. They want to see the police, they want the security force, they want to see the president. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a false equivalent. That false equivalent that is only when a state of emergency is declared that this can occur. That's not the case. Under our current law, without a state of public emergency, there are many options that the government has to ensure that the security forces are on the ground, protecting citizens and doing their regular activities to ensure that there's a reduction in crime, especially when they're clear up. We don't need a state of public emergency.
Could I come in here just to enhance your point? Could I come in?
Please, go ahead.
Yes. And I was just saying, you made a very important point, because when we had the last SOE here, the SOE was cut short, and we were in a little trepidation to say, why so early, because we saw that it was necessary to prolong it a little. Based on the scenario that was created, we were ensured that there was boots on the ground and all the necessary things were put in place to ensure our safety and comfort, which is supporting what you just said. And they left, and we rallied through the period. So, yeah, a very interesting point.
And I have to interject here as well, both gentlemen. When the SOE was not continued because of the government's poor dealing with the regulations then, the government indicated that it was the JCF Act that it was being governed by to undertake its community policing, which is what JFJ and others have been calling for. What measures already exist that can sufficiently allow the police to be deployed in the communities? Is it a resourcing issue, and how the government can get more officers trained and then utilize them? So back to you, John, to finish your answer.
So the issue is therefore why, in light of the current law, we have police officers who are not being paid what they deserve. We have the police officers have to carry the government to get overtime pay, and even now that issue has still not been resolved. So why, in light of these issues, the police officers are getting paid they deserve, the judges themselves are getting the pay that they deserve, and the underfunding of the justice system, the underfunding of the investigative capacity of the police, why it is that we need to create a brand new vehicle, the state of public emergency vehicle, an executive detention system, pay tribunal members, pay persons to fund the tribunal and to work within the tribunal, pay persons or take persons who are officers who would ordinarily be doing investigation to hold a criminal in custody for 30 years, to have that officer diverted to the state of emergency unit, or whatever what they want to call it within the JCF, to be doing proactive investigation just to hold persons for 7 days, 6 months, when more work can be done to hold real criminals for life or for 30 years. It is a choice that the government makes That's what it views as a priority. And yes, and within the short term, government may say yes, state of public emergency is one way to do it, and security measures is another way to do it. But what is being done to ensure that the investigative capacity of the JCF is strengthened? What is being done to ensure the police officers get the pay that they really deserve, bearing in mind the high attrition rate? The police officers are leaving our shores to go to America, to go to Canada, just to ensure they can get a livable wage to take care of their family. That is not how you truly fight crime. You cannot be living in a country where officers who have so much power, so much responsibility, are not paid what they deserve. That is why many citizens will and can tell stories of police officers asking them to buy them lunch, buy them drinks, stopping them and asking them what I can do for the officer, right or left.
Yes.
Because ultimately we have created an environment where we don't treat our officers with the respect that they deserve, but we can find money to pay persons to work with the state of public emergency, to pay the review tribunal, to pay lawyers to present the minister within the review tribunal. What is the priority? How much money, how much billions has the government spent over the last 5 years in the state of public emergency? And could that fund be better spent taking care of our officers, taking care of the investigative capacity of the JCS, and why it is that those things take a second chair to the choice of a state of public emergency.
All right, thank you so much, both gentlemen. We are going to have to leave it there. But, we discussed last week, Jade, this concept of budget advocacy, and perhaps JFJ ought to charge itself with the responsibility to ask those pertinent questions that Mr. Clark just outlined, to really get those questions. Mr. Clark, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to stay online with us. We have some citizens from the Central Kingston environs who want to call in on the program to let us know what is happening there and to voice their concerns. So I'm just going to ask you to hold online if you can, just in case a question may be thrown at you. All right, Mr. Dennis Robotham, President of the St. Catherine Chamber of Commerce, thank you so much, and we hope to have you again. We're going to take the break, and on the other side of the break, we take the calls and concerns.
Yes, bye.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We are now in the call-in segment of the program. You can join us on the phone at 876-676-4996 or send your comments and concerns to 876-239-7583. So today we're talking about state of emergency.
The enhanced security measures generally, including the ZOZOs. But earlier we pointed out that a young man, 24-year-old, was killed down by Central Kingston environs, and we now have some callers from within the communities to share their concerns and what is happening down that side. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So I am in Central Kingston now. I realized that some protesting took place. I'm here with a resident that saw everything, eyewitness.
Yes.
And she said she wants to share what took place. Our views on it. Okay?
All right, thank you. Welcome to the resident. And
Hello,
please be careful as you share, so you don't share any identity, any factors that can disclose your identity if you don't feel safe. All right?
Okay, thank you very much.
Go ahead for us.
Well, yesterday I was here. Before that, I noticed this soldier, him always come around and tell the young man them to come off the pole, that the barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday him come and him was harassing the young men them and say, well, now not dead today, Anyway, his behavior was bad. Everybody started to curse him and him go away. And couple minutes after, about 20 minutes after him come back. And when him come back, me dead here, I do my business and thing, and him the youth when kill, then I sit down beside to him, elder person, him tell him to get up and put him against the wall, them search him and whatever, and them I run down some more little youth, and the youth dead there, and the tall soldier guy, him just spin around and box him. When him box him, it's like him hold up back him hand, like you go attack back somebody,
yes.
But never attack him back. The next soldier just fly up and give him a fine kick, and the tall soldier lick him with the gun, and the three soldiers them started to beat him.
So,
after beating him, and him a walk where I go off now, like him a bend down, and the soldier just come up close. And
so you witnessed all of this? You
yes.
witnessed from the...
I witnessed everything. Everything. My lady, It is a gruesome act. I got told and I turned back a while ago, come here, walk and I cry. We never see somebody wicked, so somebody innocent, nothing. Not even a pin in the have. Nothing him not do, nothing.
So when he was being physically abused by the security forces, as you witnessed, did he resist? Did he fight back? What led to the shooting?
Him not get a chance to fight them. Because when him fi get up now, you see the get up when him get up from the liquor them a lick him a go towards the sidewalk.
So he just tried to walk away.
From East Street and Last Street where them a lick him, and they say him a walk up on the sidewalk when him come over and shoot him.
Thank you so much for sharing. I know the Indicom is investigating this incident at the moment.
The same thing when I tell you, the Indicom.
So you have spoken to the Indicom officers?
I'm going to tell the world the same thing. If the Queen rise, I tell her the same thing. Because when I see me talk, I add and I'm going to put her, take off. The murder, the little boy.
As a resident within the community, let me ask you, what has been your observation of the interaction between the security forces and the residents?
Okay. The only issue I have is that same soldier overall, every time him a work, them work together, every time them a work, you have some war going with the civilians.
You're breaking up a little, I think the wind in the background. Yes, go ahead again.
There's a war going on with civilians
yes.
in Jamaica. Them say dark side and genocide. And that soldier man keep telling the young man say dark side him say. And one hour after that, all while him come at the community, you do that.
Has the witnesses made any such complaints before?
Him dey on social media already a fight with some of the youth them.
Oh.
Him on social media already, long time before this.
So any complaints ever come from the residents about this particular soldier?
Yes, all while.
Who did the residents make these complaints to?
And them report about him, but him keep masking him face, but people know him still.
So apart from social media though, what I want to get at, who else, which institution, JDF, any other soldiers on scene, who have we made these reports to? Indicom, anybody else?
I don't know if the family them what him was fighting their kids, making a report. I don't know about it.
Oh. All right, thank you so much, both of you, for calling in, and please keep the lines of communication open. I know the JFJ team will be visiting the community to speak to the residents ourselves, but please, I want to encourage citizens. You have your rights, use them. We know the institutions like Indicom, JFJ, call us. We are always in support of residents being respectful. But respect, or the lack thereof, gives no one the right to abuse us and to utilize force in the manner that we saw on that very disturbing video. And JJ will be making a public statement later on about this particular incident. Mr. Clark, you're still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
As a board director of JFJ and as an attorney who has dealt with this matter, do you have any comments based on what the resident outlined earlier?
I just have one comment, that is normally when once you have these type of activities where the police or the security forces are calling the community.
Mr. Clark, you're breaking up a little.
Once you have these police officers or security forces are calling the community with order to the community, quote unquote order,
yes.
You will have situations where, as the resident described, the security officers telling persons to come off of the wall and to do certain things which will obviously lead to clashes. And importantly, moving forward, once we have these kind of activities taking place, is a recognition on the part of the stakeholders,
yes.
especially state organs, that these clashes are likely and that there must be a clear communication to citizens of how do you complain, who do you complain to.
Yes.
Because ultimately, when the citizens are besieged by security forces, nobody really wants to come out to make a complaint. Persons generally want to stay off the radar in fear that they will be victimized, and ultimately the state organs have to find creative means to find out what is happening on the ground before it leads to death of citizens. Because it is very hard for citizens who sometimes are treated less than they deserve to now come and say and make a complaint against Officer X, bearing in mind that the view that nothing is likely to be done by the state in relation to complaints against Officer X.
Yes. I think we have to leave it there, John Clark. Thank you so much for joining us. We certainly appreciate it. And before we close out, I think we have to acknowledge the bravery of the residents in speaking out. I know they had some protesting. The recording, I won't even get into the conversation again about where are these body cameras. But Jade, over to you with the trivia.
Well, before I even give the trivia, I have to say I've been silent after the comment from our caller, and honestly, it really affected me. I can see that this is one of the things that we've spoken about is the emotional and psychological effect that these measures can have on communities and community members, and the kinds of things that they would continuously witness when under these measures.
Yes.
With that in mind, we do have a winner for our trivia. And the question today was, when was the first SOE instituted under this administration? The answer was January 2018, and the winner is Confident Palmer. She's a regular winner, I think. This is about her third win. So I'd like to encourage those of us following the JFJ page to engage with the trivia so we can take some of that credit from Confident Palmer.
Yes.
But yes, so the credit will be coming, Confident. Thank you for always participating in the show. Thank you so much to the members of the community that called in and spoke out today and expressed their views.
And lastly, we want to encourage others to call the JFJ office at 755-4524.
Absolutely.
If they witness anything else and any other injustices that they want to make a report
And
on.
if you'd like to send a WhatsApp, please do at 876-239-7583. Someone from JFJ will reach out to you. Thanks again for joining us. This was Let's Start Justice.
I'm Michael Jackson, Executive Director.
And I'm Jade Williams, the Policy and Advocacy Specialist at JFJ. Thanks again.